with the Mexico one. But yeah,
Location of a country's capital city is one of the most important choices for any nation's leaders to make. They contain important government facilities, offices, and headquarters, and usually contain the primary residence of the nation's leadership. The capital city is basically the brain of a country, and choosing the location of where you want to place your brain is, of course, a highly strategic choice. Most often, the best location for a capital city is somewhere that can be easily defended, and from where you can exert control and project unity over the
I
rest
think
of
we
the
watched a video about why Mexico City was like the worst capital city. Where it wasn't like that, but it had like terrible geography. That happens. Washington D.C., London. So we have a lot of reasons on how to choose a capital city. It can be centralized if you want a centralized government, or it can be decentralized. Countries moving their capitals is also fairly common. I think Brazil built a brand new capital. Brasilia, far away. I don't know if it was Rio or Sao Paulo, which was the old capital. But yeah, countries move their capitals all
country.
the time.
Capitals need to be seen as representative of the entire nation and be easily accessible to the largest number of people possible.
Yep.
And for all those reasons, capitals are most often built within the center of a country. But sometimes, the choice of an old location ends up, eventually, just not working out. For example, in 2005, Myanmar moved their capital city away from Old Yangon, the largest city in the country, and towards Naypyidaw.
Indonesia is an island country, and usually island countries are best because of the geography. True. Ask Australia.
300 kilometers to the north.
Australia,
This
I
was
think,
done
also
because
built a new
Naypyidaw is
capital,
more
right?
centrally located within the country than Yangon was. And it was also a transportation hub located right next to three chronically turbulent and rebellious states. And so it was felt that the presence of the capital and the military so nearby would help to improve the region's stability. And further, it was ruled that the old capital of Yangon was simply more vulnerable to climate disasters since it was located directly on the coast. As was
True.
showcased in 2008,
Do you guys think that climate change would have something to do with Indonesia moving their capital? I think it will. I think it will eventually. What's Indonesia's current capital? Is it Jakarta?
when a cyclone smashed directly into it and destroyed
I think it's
three-quarters of
Jakarta,
the city's
right?
infrastructure. In a similar manner, Brazil also moved their capital city back in 1960
Brasilia, we're
away from the
talking about it.
historical, but by then
Hello, my
overcrowded
friend,
Rio de
Juan
Janeiro on the
Caudillo.
coast, and towards a
Hola,
deeper
hola.
and more centralized location within the Brazilian interior that they ended up calling Brasilia. This decision was largely made in order to encourage inland growth away from the coasts, and to make the capital city more regionally neutral. And then, of course, there was the Great Showdown in Australia back in
Australia,
1927,
we talked about that
when
too.
neither Sydney nor Melbourne could agree on which city should become the nation's capital, and
So,
thus they ended up
Canberra.
compromising by building Canberra roughly in between them from scratch. Now, in the year 2022, there are
I think Indonesia does get a lot of volcanoes and maybe some tropical storms. I don't think they get a lot of hurricanes though.
two very large modern countries who are actively in the process of relocating their capital cities for pretty familiar
Indonesia
reasons.
and
Egypt is relocating their
Egypt,
capital away
Cairo.
from Cairo towards a newer, planned city still under construction a bit over to the east, while Indonesia is relocating their capital city away from Jakarta and moving it more than 1,000 kilometers
shit,
away
to the
a
island of
completely
Borneo.
different island. This is incredibly significant because Indonesia itself is an incredibly significant country. She has the fourth highest population of any country in the world, lagging only behind China, India, and the United States, and boasts more than 270 million people. For such a large
yeah,
country,
isn't it like the
however,
fourth
Indonesia is rather
most
unique
populated
because
country?
while China, India, and the United States are all major and generally contiguous continental powers, Indonesia is really about 17,000 totally separate islands, all scattered apart from each other. And these islands are not equal. There's five big
Listen,
land
it's fucking mental how you can manage a country with that much islands. All right, especially when you have to share New Guinea, the island. Is it an island of New Guinea? You also have to share Borneo. It's
and
just
areas that Indonesia
I don't know,
controls.
man.
The entire
Fucking
islands of
messy.
Sumatra, Java, and Sulawesi, and half of the big islands of Borneo
Hello.
and New Guinea.
How are you doing, my
However,
friend?
Four
It's
of
good
these
to see
island
you.
territories are fairly sparsely
Hope you all
populated,
enjoy the
while
stream.
thousands
We
of
have some
smaller
very good
islands add little to
reactions.
the overall population as well. By and large, that leaves the island
yeah, it's fucking crazy that Indonesia has the biggest Muslim country. You usually think about Islam and the Middle East, but no.
of Java, which
India,
alone is home to
Pakistan,
more than 60%
Nigeria,
of the
Indonesia,
entire
huge
Indonesian
Muslims,
population,
Muslim population.
145 million people. This makes Java by
That's
far
fucking
the world's
massive,
most
dude. That's
populated island, with
insane.
even more people than Russia, a country that is
Yeah, holy
123
shit.
times larger.
More
And
people than Mexico too.
so it's pretty fair to say that this island is basically the center of Indonesia's population and culture. And so naturally, the capital of Indonesia has been located on Java for a very long time, and it's
Gosh.
located right here, Jakarta. Jakarta has been a pretty
Jakarta.
major city for centuries,
Jakarta.
but with little fanfare in the modern 21st
Jakarta.
century world, the city's metropolitan population has skyrocketed to a
Those islands
population
are as
of
wide
around
as the US,
35
damn.
million people, which makes Jakarta the second largest urban area in the entire world after
Behind
only Tokyo,
Tokyo, yeah.
which, as fate would have it, is also located on another island. Besides serving as the capital of Indonesia,
What's up with islands and massive cities though?
Jakarta is also the diplomatic capital
tend
of
to
ASEAN,
underestimate
or the
island countries and
Association
their
of
population.
Southeast
True.
Asian Nations, which is effectively Southeast Asia.
Like Australia, Japan, Indonesia, they have huge populations. Madagascar too has a relatively high population, doesn't it?
Asia's version of the European Union, and
Relatively,
so
of
you can
course.
sort of think of Jakarta's role here as being similar to Brussels
Taiwan.
in Europe. Jakarta is an enormously important and significant global city, but it is not without problems that make it actually a not
She's
so
friggin'
favorable
massive.
location for Indonesia's
She's a
capital
thick girl.
city in the 21st century. For one, as I mentioned previously, there is a lot of inequality within the country. While Java is home to 60% of
Australia's
Indonesia's
more of a
population,
continent. Yeah,
the
that's
island
also
only
true.
makes up 7% of Indonesia's land. Ultimately, that means that the remaining 93% of the country's landmass, over on the 17,000 other islands, are pretty underrepresented both in terms of population and in economics. While the economy in both
The
Jakarta and
England of
Java has been
Asia.
growing
Lol,
tremendously
yeah.
over the past few decades, the other islands have been more or less economically left behind and have remained fairly stagnant. To illustrate this point, ever since 1971, Java has gained 75 million people, while Sumatra has only gained 38 million, Kalimantan, what the Indonesian side of Borneo is called, only 11 million, Sulawesi only about 10 million, while Western New Guinea only gained 4 million.
Oh,
and while these
damn.
other islands may look close by on a map,
And I'm guessing there's also a lot of linguistic diversity within Indonesia, which it always makes things harder. You can ask a lot of countries. Maldives has the same situation of being a victim of global warming. Yeah, it's really scary what's going to happen to
like
the
this,
Maldives.
they really aren't. If you place the islands of Indonesia over Europe with Java placed roughly over northern Italy, you'd quickly see that Kalimantan is as far away as northern Germany and Poland. Sulawesi is over in Belarus and Ukraine,
She's a
while
thick
Western
girl.
New Guinea is way over in Kazakhstan. A lot of these places are very far
Very
away
different
from Jakarta and are
from each
therefore
other.
isolated and remote from the center of power, often across thousands of kilometers of ocean.
New Guinea is also fucking isolated. You know, there's always talk about how it's the country with the most languages, and it's also the country with the most uncontacted tribes out there. I mean, maybe I could be wrong with those statements, but it's fucking insane. And of course, they share the island of New Guinea. Country with
Based
multiple languages
exclusively on the
always have a lot of
centralization of
problems.
power factor,
True.
it would make the most sense from a geographic perspective to place Indonesia's capital within either Kalimantan and Borneo or on Sulawesi. But of course, centralization alone is not usually a good enough reason to go through all
not
of these
good
moving
enough.
pains.
Oh,
The
why
larger
not?
motivations are that Jakarta itself has a lot of issues. To start, the city has experienced a tremendous amount of urban growth in the past few decades. Back in 1945, at the beginning of the
Oh,
Second
wow.
World War, the city's population was only 600,000 people. 25 years
Ask
later, by
Canada,
1970,
nom
the city's
start
population had
true.
increased by six-fold to more than
Those
4 million.
Quebecois.
And then 50 years later from then, by 2020, it had more than doubled again, to more than 10.5 million within the boundaries of the city proper, largely owing to massive
Oh,
internal
damn.
migration from the rest of Indonesia. As a
crap.
result of all this growth, the city has been experiencing a substantial ecological breakdown, accompanied by intensely gridlocked traffic and congestion. Nearly 4.5 million cars and more than 13 million motorcycles are used on the city's streets, while public transportation only accounts for a third of the city's commuters. To exacerbate the pollutants from all these vehicles, there are 7
Yo,
existing
this is a huge problem. Mexico also has a lot of issues with vehicles and public transportation. Mexico City, sorry, not Mexico the country.
coal-fired power plants and 5 more planned plants, all within a 100-kilometer radius of the city. The emissions from those 5 planned plants alone will eventually be equal to adding 10 million additional cars to Jakarta's already crowded streets.
Oh my God.
Given this, air pollution and smog within the city is a serious issue, and it generally ranks alongside cities like New Delhi and Beijing. The air quality can get so bad here that just last year in 2021, 172 days were considered too unhealthy to be outside,
Wow.
which was more than half of the entire year. And then, of course, there's the traffic itself.
That's a lot. As someone that lived in Mexico City a long time, I can tell you it gets really bad sometimes with the pollution, but it's not as Mexico. Big problem is that the city will collapse. All right, don't spoil the video, dude. Like, we'll see it eventually. Oh, are you talking about the sinking? Yeah, it's fucking sinking. It's literally collapsing.
Jakarta has often been
On
named
itself,
the
yeah,
world's worst
that's true,
city
that's
for
true.
traffic on multiple occasions by multiple publications. But here are some ways to put it all in
The
perspective.
Mexico City,
It's
the
been
traffic
estimated
is
before that
insane. The
average
pollution
Jakarta
is
resident
horrible.
will spend 10 years of their lifetime there in traffic. The
What
largest
the
satellite city of
fuck,
Jakarta, where many
yo,
downtown office
10
workers live,
years.
is Bogor, 25 miles away from the Jakarta core. Under normal Jakarta traffic conditions,
guessing that's
it
like a
usually
suburb.
takes 2 hours to drive across those 25 miles. And when the conditions are considered bad, it can take more like 3 hours. It's
God
gotten
damn.
so bad that high-ranking government officials have to regularly be escorted by police convoys through the city just to arrive at their meetings on time. And to
What
make
the
matters
fuck?
even worse, Jakarta's population is
I wouldn't mind giving California back to the Mexicans and making that Mexico's new capital. I've heard traffic in LA is fucking
still
insane too.
growing. By 2030, it's projected that there will be more than 40 million people living within the metropolitan area, more than the entire population of Canada, and causing it to surpass even Tokyo to become the world's newest, largest city. But out of all of Jakarta's many problems,
Oh, no,
it's
the
water
poverty,
that is the
yeah.
most severe.
Water.
As with many coastal cities across the world, Jakarta is not unique in dealing with the threat of rising sea levels. But Jakarta's specific situation is rather unique because on top of dealing with sea levels rising, the city is simultaneously sinking. Jakarta's sinking problem is very
well,
similar to
apparently
both Mexico
they face
City
the
and
same
Venice,
problem as
both of which
Mexico,
I've made
though.
videos about in the past, but this is the gist. Just like both of those cities, Jakarta was established within a swampy
Wait,
environment.
What did he said? Did he mention Mexico City?
Levels rising, the city is simultaneously sinking. Jakarta's sinking problem is very similar to both Mexico City and Venice, both of which I've made videos about in the
shoot.
past, but
By the way, to everyone watching on YouTube, I have a reaction video on, I think, either both videos or at least the Mexico City one. Oh no, poverty. Oh yeah, water. Yeah, man, they just fucking suck. Was the video you watched about Russia being the same size of Pluto? I don't think it was from that YouTuber. No, I remember in China they had to sit in traffic for like a whole
this
week.
is the
Oh
gist.
shit!
Just like both of those cities, Jakarta
That
was
fucking
established
sucks,
within a
dude.
swampy
For a whole
environment many
week? For
centuries
real?
ago before the needs of modern cities were at all understood. 13 rivers flow through the city, which used to provide ample fresh water, but now they're all wildly polluted and currently unusable
Yeah,
for drinking
just
water.
fucking filled up
Jakarta does have a
shit,
series of
man.
water pipes, but they only reach about 60% of the population, and they're all highly concentrated in the more wealthy areas of South and Central Jakarta.
Of
As for
course.
the millions of other people who don't have any access, ground pumping is basically the only means of obtaining any fresh water for themselves. But of course, as this water beneath the surface is removed, the soil above will continue to compact and
To rise,
sink.
yeah.
And it doesn't help that nowadays there are dozens of massive and heavy concrete and steel skyscrapers across the city's
That's a
surface,
lot of
adding
fucking
even
buildings,
more weight
too.
and pressure, pushing down
holy
onto the
crap.
fragile soil below. As a result of all these contributing factors, the entirety of Jakarta is now sinking into the ground by about 1 centimeter a year. But there are some areas seeing as much as 25 centimeters of sinkage a year. When you take rising sea levels into consideration, it's easy
Oh
to
my god,
see
is
why
this like a canal? Does this work exactly like Venice, or it's just a river going through, almost touching the buildings, dude? Look at that. Holy crap. Honestly, although Hawaii's in a country, they face the same problem. Wow, really? I guess a lot of these island nations truly face a lot of shit.
most of the city will very
Due to
shortly
climate
be
change
in
and-
grave danger. And while floods are already a chronic
Oh my
problem
God,
that the
dude,
city
this
faces,
sucks.
it's nothing compared to what might happen in the future. The entire city rests within a
Oh,
flat basin,
dude,
and
this is
according to some
bad.
estimates, 40% of Jakarta is already sitting beneath sea level, while many others predict that by 2050, only 20
And then you combine this with Indonesia facing tropical storms and typhoons, and then climate change. It's just really fucking bad. Like, I would say it's even worse than Mexico City, to be honest. They don't have water. They are sinking like Mexico City, but they are also facing typhoons, hurricanes, and it's a coastal city. Mexico City is not a coastal city. Indonesia should do what the Netherlands and use the water to their advantages. I would agree to that, but I don't think Indonesia has the resources to do
28
that.
short years from now, the
Maybe, I don't know.
entire city proper of more than 10.6 million people will be buried beneath the sea like a modern-day Atlantis, assuming
We'll
that
create a
nothing
big
was
housing
actually done
problems.
about it. But of course, there
Due to people
is a
losing their
plan to do
homes,
something
yeah.
about it, and it's insane. In 2014, the Indonesian government revealed the plans for what they called Giant Seawall Jakarta, expected to be completed by
Giant
2025.
Seawall
The
Jakarta.
plan will eventually construct a titanically sized seawall across the entirety of Jakarta
Isn't this what Venice was also trying to do? Building literally a fucking seawall?
Bay to protect the city from the ocean beyond. The wall is planned to be constructed in the form of a Garuda, a giant legendary bird from the Hindu and Buddhist faiths that is also the national symbol of Indonesia.
Yeah.
The whole structure is intended to be iconic and boost tourism, and it draws heavy inspiration from nearby Singapore's Sentosa Island project. After the massive bird guardian is constructed, Jakarta Bay itself
What do
is
you guys
intended to
think? Do you guys think that they will be able to accomplish this? It sounds like a very ambitious project. Indonesia's economy, it's not, I guess, the healthiest, but they do have a big economy. Of course, they are a massive country. I think they might be able to do it. I think they could eventually. I mean, they have to, right? They have to protect their largest city, or else they're literally gonna get screwed.
become a water reservoir
Based.
enclosed inside that will
Yeah, I think
eventually
they will
become a
do it.
vast new source for fresh, clean water in the city. Jakarta's 13 rivers that all flow into the bay today are all planned to be cleaned up and cleared of pollution in order to keep their currently polluted outflows from transforming the bay into a stagnant cesspool.
Nice.
Meanwhile, the giant seawall itself
I think-
is
I-
intended
bro,
to
I
become
think
a
they can
new
do it. Yeah,
center
for
of
sure.
Jakarta's
Hell yeah.
urban development, complete with housing, roads, and railways that connect back to the mainland that
I'm rooting
should
for
all
you,
be
Indonesia.
capable of hosting a new population of 2 million people.
Indonesia's cool,
the whole
though.
project is expected
I'd
to
love to
carry a
visit.
steep price tag of about $40
$40
billion,
billion,
and it
dude.
hasn't come without controversies. For
Damn.
one thing, it would require the eviction of many nearby residents and the seizing of private lands along the coast, something that many locals depend upon for their livelihoods. Further, there are fears that if the wall were to ever fail because of something like a terrorist attack or some unforeseen black swan event, that the subsequent flooding would be catastrophic and probably end up destroying the city anyway in the future when sea levels are
Yeah, it'd be fucking Titanic. Like if that wall breaks, or like I said, a terrorist attack, or just a fucking massive typhoon, Indonesia would be.
higher. This all means that the
Jakarta
wall
would be
will end up
done.
being a critical security weak
Oh my
point
god,
that
dude,
Indonesia
look at the people going through their motorcycles as if nothing were happening. Don't motorcycles would get screwed by
would
doing
have to
this, by running
defend
through the
at
water?
all costs. And then there are many, many environmental concerns about building the wall to just heap on top of everything else. So with all of these negative factors going against Jakarta, and the obvious need to alleviate the growing population pressure and weight on the sinking city, the
Hope they
current
don't have a
leader
lot
of
of
Indonesia,
corruption.
President Joko Widodo, made a bold
Big
announcement
projects,
in
money tend to
2019
disappear.
to
True.
move the capital city away from Jakarta for the first time. And while the specifics of the exact location and plan are still in the stages of being figured out, things are moving pretty quickly.
Come on,
For
Mr.
one,
President.
we know that the general area of the new capital will be nearly 1,000 kilometers away from the current-day Jakarta, over on the island of Borneo, which happens to be the third largest island in the world, and it means that Indonesia's capital will be on an island shared with 2 other countries in the north, Malaysia and Brunei. Borneo is largely
Yeah.
covered by rainforest
The
and
Great
is
Wall of
sparsely
Indonesia,
populated,
hell
but
yeah.
it possesses several advantageous features for Indonesia's new capital city. First, the Indonesian government itself already owns a large part of the land over on their side of the border, making it easy to build a brand new planned capital city. Compared
Yeah, you don't have to fucking evict the people who are already living there, dude.
With Jakarta, the risk of disasters here are rather minimal, whether it be from floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, or especially from volcanoes.
Volcanoes, yeah,
Indonesia's
they have a lot of
geography is
fucking
dominated
volcanoes.
by volcanoes, and many of their eruptions in the past across the archipelago have been some of
Indonesia
the
has
most
had a history of
destructive disasters in all of
authoritarianism.
human history. The top two most powerful volcanic eruptions ever in recorded human history both took place in Indonesia, at
Oh,
Krakatoa in 1883 and at Mount Tambora in 1815,
wait till
both of which
Yellowstone
caused
happens, dude.
enormous destruction. 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano erupted on Sumatra and was so destructive that it caused a 6-year-long global volcanic winter and may have almost led to the early
Yeah.
extinction of the entire human species.
Yeah, it's
Today,
fucked
there
up,
are
yeah.
at least 127 active volcanoes across the country, and more than 5 million
Oh,
Indonesians live within their danger zones. But if you notice on this map,
damn.
there aren't
Look at that. Look, especially the island of Java. It's just full of fucking. Look at this area right here. And I think Jakarta is actually like close to this, right? Indonesia is very conservative. I'm doomed if Yellowstone happens. I live in California. Oh, brother, I feel for you. I mean, I think we all would be doomed, but I think that side of the states would be fucked.
any major active volcanoes on Borneo, which, from a risk perspective, makes it far
Yeah,
safer for the country's
true.
brain to be located
Risk
there than
aversion,
on either
that's
Java
cool.
or Sumatra. And finally, Borneo is geographically located nearly precisely in the center of the entire Indonesian archipelago, and there are several developing city areas nearby the proposed location that stand to grow immensely over time. In total,
Yo,
Indonesia hopes to create
we're
a
almost
new
10
capital
guys.
territory on Borneo that
10
will
people
cover nearly
watching the stream.
700 square
Amazing.
miles, slightly larger than the city of London's area and more than twice the
You
size
can't
of
remove
present-day
volcanoes,
Jakarta.
yeah.
It is also President Widodo's hope that eventually this new capital will be home to 1.4 million government employees and their families, potentially reaching upwards of a population of 7 million people all in all. With several futuristic designs already picked out for the more important government buildings like the Presidential Palace and more, all that's left is to fund the effort and begin
You gotta build that presidential palace, yo.
construction. The total estimated price tag for building the new capital here is around $34 billion. But with extensive delays in the project stemming from the
34
COVID-19 pandemic,
billion.
budget cuts, and other mounting pressures, President Widodo certainly has his work cut out for him.
Come on, President Widodo. They want to build a 40 billion wall. They want to build a 34 billion city. Dude, this fucking President Widodo has a lot of ambitions. I wonder what you guys, the Indonesians who will eventually, hopefully, watch this, think about him.
Over the
I live in
next
DC, so
several
I'm gonna be
years,
safe
as he
in my
oversees
bunker.
the remainder of his second term as
Yo,
president.
I think DC does actually have a lot of bunkers nearby, right? There's a military base close to DC that I think has a bunker. I could be wrong.
Since he hopes to begin moving at least some government offices over to Borneo in 2024, he only has 2 short years remaining to accomplish it
Oh,
while he's still in
yeah.
office. And as for Jakarta, even though the city is definitely facing some pretty serious hurdles over the coming decades, Widodo's hope is that encouraging millions of people to
That's a
leave
funny
the
name,
city for the new
Widodo.
capital over on Borneo
I
will
fucking
be
love
enough
saying
to
that
relieve
shit.
at least some of the pressure and allow Jakarta precious time to recover and thrive.
No,
once
honestly, all
again.
the skyscrapers look fucking amazing. Like I wouldn't imagine all the Jakarta. I didn't imagine that Jakarta would have so many buildings and skyscrapers.
So a lot of people have asked me for years now how I make videos
Man,
on
they should
YouTube
build a
like
river
this one,
dam.
and how I got started.
That would help, for
Honestly,
sure.
it all began with just saving up enough money from my side job while I was in college to build my own beefy editing computer that could handle all of the animations and
Oh.
the footage that I wanted to create.
Micro Center, yeah, that's a cool store. If you're in the States, I think it's a beautiful store, Micro Center. I was in Micro Center a few times, but it's obviously very hard to transport PC parts from one country to another, so I just wouldn't do it. Well, that was a great video. Guys, are you listening to me? Is the audio good? I feel it's not. Is that better? I think that's better, right? Maybe, I don't know. I hope so. All right.